best thing young Christians can do who are struggling with cultural issues in relationship to their desire to get married is talk to your pastors. The circumstances are exceedingly different, so it's impossible with one video to give you advice on, hey, go home and do exactly this. However, there are broad categories for us to consider under this question. One, we all live in a particular culture. Doesn't matter if we're from the US, in Kenya, whether it was back in the 60s or it's going to be 60 years from now. Culture is inevitable. And I guess the thing that we're struggling with a lot with is that our parents might exist in one culture and the young people are existing in a different culture. So it might be useful to start off with saying young people can grow in appreciating the culture of the old folk, and as they seek to have these conversations to not have a flawed view of the fact that just because their culture is different, their culture is superior. Second, it's useful to also know that culture is not necessarily neutral. There's things that are going to be in culture that are as an effect of God's grace, things that will reflect truths of Scripture, and there's things because of our fallen nature are going to be also in contradiction to God's character. So if you look at your tradition, it's useful to say, hey, you know what? This cultural practice was a good way of showing respect. And we as young people, when we are addressing people of that culture, don't have to ignore that aspect of culture. We can embrace it, we can use it, and we can promote it. So for example, for us in Kenya, you can find the ideas of giving dowry. This is where exactly, where problems oftentimes come up when people are trying to get married. Originally speaking, good ideas behind the concept of dowry. As time moved on, it's become corrupted. It's just become a way of people getting money, and oftentimes a great hindrance to young people getting married. What would be useful for a young person to do who's desiring to get married? To not just ignore the whole idea of dowry per se, but to ask themselves, is there a way in which I could actually show the things that particular practice used to seek to prove? E.g., in our culture, the reason why parents of a young girl would ask for dowry was for the young man to show whether he's actually of age, he's actually able to provide for the young girl that is coming to ask his hand for in marriage. So that if they ask for 2 goats and the young man has no clue where he's going to get 2 goats from, the question is, well, if you can't come across 2 goats, how exactly do you intend to feed my daughter for the rest of life? Now, that's a good idea behind it. Parents don't have to demand that by asking for 400 goats, for example. But it's useful if the young man coming forward does not totally disregard the fact that dowry is not like the parent is trying to sell the child. That's not the only thing behind that. There were useful things behind it. Practically speaking, we've advised young people to go with older people. Just the same across the continent. If the people going to represent you are godly people who understand the Scriptures, but also most probably have a better understanding of culture than you do, they can really, really aid in conversations like that. So for young people, what do I encourage? Do your best. Do your best to respectfully urge parents who are putting up unnecessary stumbling blocks to your desire to get married, to remove them. Do so with carefulness, do so with wisdom, do so with a multitude of counselors, hopefully by older people than you are. However, what I would say is you want to keep the authority that the Lord has put you under in the local church involved in this conversation, because we would be those who would be very hesitant before we advise a young couple to ignore the words of their mom and dad. And yet there are cases where that might be the advice that comes forth, but that's not something that you get from a video like this. That's the kind of thing you talk to the people who you're in church with and the authority that the Lord has put you under in your local church.